What's poppin', y'all? One of the most unlikely back and forths we're seeing is between the rapper Joyner Lucas and one of the biggest media platforms in hip hop history, and that is DJ Vlad. And this all started from a really, really weird inception. So, this all started from well, I guess you could say the point of no return came when Joyner Lucas was beefing with Skepta earlier. I think it was earlier this year. There was a back and forth that was going on between the two, and it wasn't actual beef. Like, they didn't have real problems. Jonah, that was what Skepta was calling him. But it was about UK versus US rap, and he wanted to take the back and forth. And one thing that, regardless of what you think about Joyner Lucas's music, what you think of him, I don't feel like we have much of an opinion of him as a person unless you draw his person from the music. But yeah, there's nothing really bad to say about him as a person, but some people feel like his music's lame, corny, etc., things like that. And some people are fans of him, and I think I lean more towards the middle, where I'm like, okay, some stuff is for me, some stuff is not for me. But one thing that I really like about Joyner Lucas is he is not one guy to turn down a challenge. He had a great back and forth with Tory Lanez years ago, and he didn't get run down on like Dax did, unfortunately. I thought that was such a sad situation. I thought that was wrong of Tory. But he also came at Skepta, and he's always willing to go back and forth with anybody. So when he was going back and forth with Skepta, he posted on his Twitter, he reposted a clip of an interview that Vlad did with Aries Spears. Now, so it's a clip, and then he just used that of Aries Spears, the comedian, making fun of UK rappers, them being non-threatening, the music, etc. It's jokes, but like I said, there's truth in almost every joke. And especially with Americans, most Americans, especially American rap fans, feel the same way that Aries Spears did, which is like, man, I'm not trying to hear that accent, like even an accent. They won't even want to hear the same language, just in a different accent. And that's always something that I gave credit to UK rappers for, is not rapping in an American accent, because most singers, like you look at One Direction, you look at Harry Styles, you look at Adele, you look at a lot of other acts, and they will sing in an American accent, probably because most of them were inspired by American singers and artists, and it just followed that way. But that's one thing I had respect for. But what happened was he took down that clip, and this was, now part of the reason that Vlad says he took down the clip is because he didn't have his logo in it. Now, this is the thing. Like, if you guys see almost the entirety of my channel, I do not use anything Vlad related, because Vlad had the reputation. I don't know if it's since changed, because I see some people use Vlad clips. I'm not going to test that theory, but some people will use Vlad clips and they won't get copyrighted for it. But in the past, and Vlad has been vocal about this, he's like, yeah, you use anything from my content, you're getting a strike. I don't care. And then he sort of loosened it up and was like, oh, like, we just don't want people taking out my logo and this and that. Regardless, I'm not messing with it at all. So he reposts the clip, and this is Twitter too, which is a little bit different from YouTube and Instagram. And if you see, like, for example, part of the spread of the 6ix9ine interview with Vlad was via, like, Soulja Boy challenge as well, was via it getting spread on these different platforms like TikTok, etc. And he's not taking down every single one. So he's a bit selective about it. So he was trying to get an interview with Joyner Lucas for quite a while. You could see the back and forth in text. So you can see a history here of Vlad consistently reaching out to do an interview with Joyner Lucas. You see right here, it says Friday, December. Following up about Joyner again would be a good time with the Will Smith single. So this is when the Will Smith single came out. So this is a long time ago. They says following up again. And then this point of contact for Joyner Lucas says, what's good, bro? He's dropping album top of the year. Let's revisit then. They says copy. And then he replies, beginning of the year. This guy is a professional. That's for sure. He's replying at the right time. He's like, okay, beginning of the year, I'll hit them back up. He hits them back a month later. Following up about the interview again. You said to hit about this time. They just leave him on red or seen or whatever. He says, good to finally meet both of you. Let's lock in the interview. So he met them in person here. It was maybe at the album release, not sure. He says, you too, we'll keep in touch. And he says, how can we lock in the interview? I guarantee it will be his most watched interview ever. He says, I'm sure it will, just right timing. At this point, I would have just, honestly, after the first or second one, I would have just been like, okay, this is not going to happen. They won't give me a reason why. But you know what they say, persistence overcomes resistance. Just me personally, especially the position that I'm in. Well, Vlad, he somewhat needs interviews for his show. Well, he does need other people to be on his show. But I'll give you guys maybe like my own experience later on in the video. And then he says, I'm sure it will, just right time. He says, when were you thinking? They said, not sure. We'll let you know. At this point, and this is June. This is like 6-7 months. You know they don't want to make it happen. He says, call me ASAP. Please. And this is July. So this is when the beef was going on with Skepta. He says, call me ASAP, please. Want to settle a legal matter with Joyner before we take it to court. And this is where I'm like, okay, so I don't really like this move. Because he's pulling a move where he's like, okay, I'm going to force them to have to respond to me about something. Like, I'm going to get them to talk to me. And he says, give me 5 minutes, call you back. And especially if it's a legal matter, you know somebody doesn't want to deal with that. He says, okay, let me know by 10 a.m. tomorrow what you decide to do. If I don't hear back, I'll assume you want to go the legal route. And he says, all right. And this is in response to the clip of him using the Aries Spears clip. And he says, all right, I'm going to pass it forward and let you know. But basically, you want to do an interview. And when you're trying to do this interview, he says, I'm willing to forego asking a legal copyright claim for my content being used in exchange for an interview. We can do it in our Van Nuys studio any day next week except for Tuesday. I would want to speak to him ahead of time so I know he's not going into it with a negative attitude. And I'm just like, dog, you're setting somebody up to where you're pretty much forcing him to pull up to an interview location, and then you want to talk to him because you want to make sure that he's in a good mood to do an interview that you forced him to do? What? And then this is when the point of contact sends Joyner Lucas's response to this situation. He says, screenshot it. Laughing emoji. Here's what I want you to tell Mr. Vlad for me. Dear Vlad, suck my D. Call your attorney and do whatever you have to do. I wasn't ever doing an interview with you before in this lifetime, and you're definitely not getting an interview now. So settle your legal matters however you want to settle them, kitty cat. I always thought you was a B, and this just confirms the kind of B you are. No way in this lifetime or the next will I ever allow someone like you to try to extort me out of an interview. You got me all the way effed up. Clown emoji. Send that to him, please. Listen, this guy let his nuts hang. No 6'9", or full 6'9". And then Vlad says, cool. And then they get this and at the end of July. It says, your copyright infringement entitles DJ Vlad to his actual damages, costs, attorney fees, and or statutory damages of up to $150,000 USD per infringed copyright. As such, DJ Vlad demands that you agree to the following by no later than August 11th, 2025. Immediately cease all use of DJ Vlad's copyrighted materials, which I think he already did a takedown on it, so he wasn't even using it, and he used it for a single clip. And I don't know if he reposted it from an account or if he uploaded it himself, because I think there is a distinction there. Take down the second infringing post from your X page and any affiliated materials that use DJ Vlad's copyrighted materials. Pay DJ Vlad for the damages he has suffered in an amount to be determined, and sign an agreement reflecting the above. If you agree to the above by the date specified, DJ Vlad will release you for your past conduct and refrain from pursuing the matter further. If we do not hear from you, we will have no choice but to advise DJ Vlad to proceed with all other legal avenues to protect his rights. This letter is written without prejudice to any other claims or defenses DJ Vlad may have, all of which are hereby expressly reserved. I look forward to your timely response. In the meantime, please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. And this is crazy. Up to 150,000 USD. So what is the damages that Vlad is saying here? That's the part that I really want to understand. But Joyner says, when you get sued because you ain't want to do an interview, SMH, lame dude been stalking me for years to go on his weak channel, and when he finally realized, let's be honest, that channel is not weak. That channel is doing numbers. You can say you don't like him, you can say his whack channel, but it's not weak. When he finally realized I won't sit down with his BS because I hate everything about him, he decides he's going to try to extort me out of one instead. SMH, Vlad, you got to be the beest of all bees alive. You wanted clout so bad, here's your clout. Clown emoji, ho. And then Vlad responds on Twitter and says, I'm going to respond to Joyner Lucas' temper tantrum over me suing him for copyright infringement later this week. Everything I'll talk about will be facts. They're going to skip that part, though. And he's taking this quote from the interaction and popular interviews that he's had with 6ix9ine in the past 2 months or so. And then Joyner says, shut up, ain't no facts. Only fact is that you the biggest B I ever seen. Suing me because people ain't want to sit down with your little smugged face and answer any of your BI questions. So you decide you want to take the opportunity to sue me for clout? I don't know if this was clout because he didn't make it public. You've been on my D for years trying to talk to me. I think it was more personal than clout. I'm mad my manager even was nice enough to respond to your messages at all, but he was trying to be professional. You always struck me as a BAN who would do some ish like this, which is why I ain't respect you to begin with. Hope you get all the clout you want, goofy, because you going to get exactly what you've been looking for. I think this is a really important lawsuit to happen and somebody that can actually handle it, which is Joyner Lucas. Now, this is a situation with Vlad is that if he likes people, he'll let them use his clips. And this is the dangerous position to be in because if there comes a moment when Vlad doesn't like you and you were using Vlad's content, well, suddenly now he's not going to, be too forgiving. And he's going to come at you in the way that he did with Joyner Lucas. And this is the unfortunate part because some people, like Joyner Lucas is saying clout, but Vlad is one of those people that takes it very personally when people don't want to do an interview with him. And I don't know why. Academics is not like this. He was like this when he had the Spotify deal because if you guys recall, he went on this long rant, damn near crashing out on a Henny-fueled rant on Chief Keef because Chief Keef refused to do an off-the-record interview. This was at a time when Academics was saying, like, listen, I'm hollering at everybody that I've ever helped in some way, shape, or form to hop on my platform. That's all I need. And then Chief Keef hit him up after, and then he patched things up with Chief Keef. Chief Keef didn't end up doing the interview. Chief Keef doesn't really do press like that. Now, he did do an interview with this guy, Kerwin Frost, but I think Chief Keef knows the types of questions he's going to get with a Kerwin Frost, for instance, or certain platforms versus the type of questions he would get if he pulled up on Academics podcast. But since then, I think Academics has started to take it less personally. And he's just like, hey, listen, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. However, with Vlad, if you guys remember initially, which I'm taking full credit for, when I reported the Saweetie 2K album sales, that became a whole thing, one of my finest rage baits. Vlad addressed that and said something about, oh, Saweetie, if she had pulled up to an interview, she would have gotten more than 2,000 sales, which is cap. And this is somebody taking something personal. Because somebody choosing not to do an interview with you can be for a multitude of different reasons. Like, for example, I had reached out to... Now, I have not tried to get an interview from damn near anybody for at least 4 years. Because I recognize the position that I'm in. Number one, dude, doing an interview... I'm a lazy guy, dog. Like, I'm quite lazy. In terms of... Dude, I'm going to set up a camera, make sure audio's working, go to a location. The person might be late, might not be late. And then it may do okay. And I don't need it. That's another thing. So 4 years or 5 years ago, I had reached out to a particular rapper whose music I enjoy a lot and I've spoken about. Not really mainstream. He was I don't want to point out I don't want to make him identifiable. I reached out to his team because he had like watched some of my stuff. I was like, oh, like, let me know if you guys are down to do something, etc. And then I think the manager said something along the lines of, okay, like, I'll let you know. And he actually got back to me with an honest response, which was like, I don't know if it would be like a good fit. And I was like, okay, cool. Understandable. I have no problem with the artist because I can understand. I'm like, okay, I'm a guy that gives my opinion. So with me giving my opinion, a person doing an interview with me, it may seem like, depending on the type of person, they may see it like, like I may get asked questions I don't want to answer, number one. Even though I always offer to cut things out that people don't want. Number two, I may be held responsible by other people for comments that this interviewer made about people that I'm friends with, cordial with, etc., things like that. So when you're a very opinionated person, you have to accept that, hey, listen, or if you ask certain questions like Vlad, or if you have a reputation, whether it's earned or you feel like it's not true, you have to understand from the perspective of the artist that they may not want to do an interview with you. And they may actually mess with you. They may watch your stuff, but they're not willing to co-sign your stuff. And I understand that, and I don't take that personally. And it's like, okay, cool, makes sense. So he came at Saweetie, and then Saweetie would reply and say, hey, look, that was actually my publicist, and I mess with your stuff. Like, I watch your stuff all the time. There was another individual that I can't remember off the top of my head where Vlad was talking about them not doing an interview either. And the reason why I say it's personal is because no interview is going to make someone's song, like album sales, go up, especially album sales. Now, someone's streaming might go up from the, like, for example, a 6ix9ine. It's not just because 6ix9ine did the interview with Vlad. 6ix9ine did the interview with Vlad. Vlad asked the right questions. Vlad paid 6ix9ine, so 6ix9ine was ready to answer everything, and 6ix9ine understands social media to a degree where he's like, this is not going to just be on Vlad's platform. This is going to spread everywhere with the type of stuff that I'm going to say. So I do believe that it had an effect on 6ix9ine's streams for his music. However, if this was an album selling week, even with the phenomenal week that 6ix9ine had, it would not have helped him sell more than like 2-3 max 1,000 records, because to sell 2,000 to 3,000, that's what you multiply that by 1,500. That's like what? How many? It's less than 1 million streams. Like 500,000 streams. He might have gotten 5 million streams. So like let's say 10K. So you think you're gonna offer that to a Saweetie who is not the explosive character that a Soulja Boy or a 6ix9ine is? Now in the past, interviews like had a lot more impact, especially when people bought the full album. So if you get, I don't know, like let's say a couple 100,000 on an interview and a couple thousand people buy it, or even 10,000 people buy the album, then that's a different story. But that's not the case anymore. I think this is grimy by Vlad. I think it's, this is the thing too. This will have no effect on Vlad because the way Vlad sets up his whole thing is the majority of people that watch Vlad, I don't even think they like the guy. And that's a good asset to have because it protects you from things like this. Like, for example, if you are a public figure and people watch you because they like you, if you do something like this that people find to be grimy, they're like, man, screw this guy, I'm not watching him. But with Vlad, a lot of people that watch his content, they're like, man, you know, like, I don't mess with Vlad and he's the police and this and that, but you know, this interview hit and I gotta watch what they gotta say. So I don't think this will harm him at all, but I gotta question this when he's come, and this is the biggest questions that I've had towards Vlad, and I even asked it on Twitter, which he said he would never interview 6ix9ine, 6ix9ine's a scumbag, this and that, and I just asked like, oh, why'd you change your mind? And it's an honest question. And even with the interview with 6ix9ine, 6ix9ine said, oh, you didn't want to interview me, and then he says, yeah, I changed my mind, and we didn't get answers in that interview either. So he changed his mind on that, but also he would call out not only A$AP Relly for telling, but he would call out on Kid Cudi, which I found grimy, where he's calling like Kid Cudi a snitch for being subpoenaed to show up to court when he's suing Joyner Lucas and using the threat of a lawsuit, holding it over his head to try to get Joyner Lucas to do something that you know that he didn't want to do. How are you going to compare? And then you're going to the court and it's like, what? He used a clip that, and he didn't, let's be honest, dog. How much do you guys even think money-wise Joyner Lucas made out of this beef with Skepta? He didn't come out with much of anything. So while unfortunately I think this is taking it too personal. I think this is being sensitive from Vlad's behalf. It is not going to affect his business whatsoever. His reputation, sure, but also Joyner Lucas is not somebody that's well connected in the industry. Like, for example, if Charlemagne reposted a clip and he had issues with Charlemagne and this happened, I think a lot of people would be thinking twice. And also, not only the fact that people watch Vlad because they like the content, they don't necessarily care about Vlad, even though he is contributing to the content, but he's not like the face of it. He pays his guests. So guests are unlikely to stop getting a paycheck from Vlad because he's suing or doing something that they don't like. They're like, listen, there's people show up to their corporations and jobs all the time. There's probably a bunch of stuff their job does they don't like, but they're showing up. They're like, listen, I'm here to collect my check. So that's why I think Vlad's company is in a position where this will have zero effect on it whatsoever. But I am interested to hear what he has to say. And I just think it's a personal thing. That's it. He'd be like, oh, this guy disrespected me, so I had to show him. But really, I think the disrespect started from Vlad threatening to extort the guy, because I don't remember seeing anything negative come from Joyner Lucas publicly. I don't, like, his manager was just being professional, was just pretty much letting him know, like, hey, get the hint, we're not interested in something like this. And then he decided to escalate it to the level it's at right now. But let me know what y'all think about this in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. And I'm going to see y'all on the next one.